Okay, folks, here I am. We're going to start going through the next unit, the Showa unit. And at core, what this unit is about is it's going to be a history unit. We're going to get into how history works and how it doesn't work. And we're going to be using testimonies from the Holocaust, from a movie called Showa, to go through this. Now, one thing I want to re-emphasize, something I put up in the last video and something I did at the start of the semester, you must get this book. You've got to have it. It is Showa, the complete text of the acclaimed Holocaust film. You need to make certain you've got this book right away. Now, again, something I've mentioned before, it's almost certainly been checked out of the library by now. But you're going to need it to document the quotations you're going to be using for your essay. You can follow along the early lessons in this unit without it. You can follow along by watching the film, and I'll go to that in a bit. But you're going to find it a nightmare when you try to start writing the essay and try to start typing up your own transcript of the words. So if you haven't gotten the book already, get it ordered pronto, because almost certainly one of you has already checked it out of the library, and nobody else is going to be getting it. So get this right away so you can follow along with it. We're going to be using bits and pieces from the movie. The movie is 8.5 hours long, and I'm not going to ask you to watch the whole thing. That wouldn't help. But you do need the book. You can read the whole book quite simply. It's pretty easy. It reads rapidly. It's only 180 pages. And then it's got a lot of white space in it, so it reads fast. But you need to see the movie to really get what's going on, to watch how the people are talking about things, what do their expressions change when they're speaking about what went on, and things like that. So these are really good testimonies of what transpired with the Holocaust itself. Now, going through this a little bit, well, let me give you a little background. All your essays did come in. I've got them printed out and I'm grading them. And I'm doing my best to work through them piece by piece. I should have the first essay graded, rough estimate, by the end of this week. Usually takes me about 7 days to get them graded. I've already undertaken it. I'm not done yet. But again, I think by Friday I'll have grades entered. You'll be able to see your grade. Now, what I then do is I follow up in the following week, in the subsequent week, with a video for every single student. If you turned in the essay, you will get a video in response evaluating your essay and how you were doing. But again, I'll have the grades posted this week and the videos by the end of next week. The videos do take a good deal of time, but I will be making each and every student a video for each and every essay that I received. I do this for the first 2 essays, okay? So you get a lot of time on that, on you individually, and how the writing's going and everything else. So expect that at the end of next week. Expect the video. You'll get the grade this week. I can't explain why you got your grade this week. You'll get the explanation of it in the video. But the big thing is I'll be going through how you can improve your writing. That's the big thing that we're working towards. Most folks, just a little heads up, most people have the roughest time with the first essay. The Antigone essay is probably the most difficult because you're writing it without fully knowing how to go about working with quotations and everything, and learning what's expected of you with critical thinking is new. So usually for the vast majority of students, the first essay is the weakest one. So don't be worried if you get a C or even a D on the first one. Almost all students move up as they go through the semester, because you learn, oh, this is what I've got to do. I've got it. So don't be worried about that. So that'll be coming the end of next week. You get the videos, grades by the end of this week. Okay. So let me go through this unit and how I've got it posted and everything else and what I'm doing with it. So now the calendar is kind of up. Let me go through that. Calendar works much the same way. I'm going to add a little bit more to the calendar. Let me get rid of myself here. Okay, that feels better. So you're watching the introduction video today. You're going to begin with Showa tomorrow. You can start it tonight. I've already got the videos posted. You'll watch the video, the section of it that I'll have assigned to you. And we're starting off with this area called Chelmno. So watch the videos on the testimony of Srebnik and others from Chelmno. Now, many of you know something about the Holocaust. Many of you have no idea about it, know very little. Either way, it doesn't matter, okay? What we're going to be doing is going through 3 different areas of the Holocaust, 3 different aspects of it. Number one, we're going to be going to an early camp, Chelmno, which was used to kill an enormous number of Jews, but it was early on in the Holocaust, very early on. And so its methods were quite crude. And we're going to go through what they were doing and what the villagers knew, what the one of the survivors knew, and what some of the people knew who were undertaking it. You're going to get various perspectives on it, and it's quite illuminating. It's quite odd. So Chelmno is the first place we're going to go to. And I want you to kind of summarize what you saw there and kind of give an insight into what you saw going on. And I'll be putting more of a critical thinking question up there in a bit, okay? And you're going to be writing a summary on Friday at the end. I'll give you a week for every section. We're going to be doing 3 different ones. And then next week, we're going to be doing Treblinka. Treblinka is another one of the camps. Treblinka was much more efficient than Chelmno. Oh, much more efficient. Not as efficient as Auschwitz. Most folks have heard about Auschwitz, which was really a factory for death, for killing on a large scale. So you're going to see that the Holocaust started in a very rudimentary fashion in Chelmno, and then moved on to Treblinka, and then moved on to Auschwitz, and got better and better and better. And there were a number of camps throughout, primarily throughout Poland. A lot of folks don't know this about the Holocaust. It primarily took place in Poland, and then in a few other areas. But there were a number of camps throughout Poland and other areas where they undertook the Holocaust. And you're going to see kind of how it worked from the testimonies that go on. Okay, so and we're going to go through that. The last one we're going to do is on the Jewish uprising, on the ghettos, the Warsaw ghettos, and the uprising that happened towards the end of the war, and what happened with it. And each one of these is kind of complicated and difficult to understand. And what you're going to get, and this is very important to understand, you're going to get 3 different perspectives each and every time. You're going to get survivors, you're going to get villagers in the surrounding area, but you're also going to get guards and the people directly involved in it, usually from either the German side or oftentimes Ukrainians and others took part in the actual killing. And you're going to see that it's far more complicated than what you may have learned. It's much more nuanced, there's more difficulties involved, and everything else. One thing that doesn't happen, that you don't get from anybody, is this idea that it didn't happen. And I want to make everybody aware from the beginning, the Holocaust deniers that exist today are plain and simply anti-Semites. They're delusional, they're horrifically racist, and they're just horrendously wrong. Whether or not the Holocaust occurred is not debatable. The nature of how it was undertaken, we can debate and get into nuances and issues of it. Definitely that. With what the survivors say, the villagers and the guards say, there are areas where there are things where you can get into different perspectives. Whether or not the Holocaust took place is not debatable. It is solidly known. You're going to hear the survivors, you're going to hear the villagers, you're going to hear the guards talk about it in very clear and straightforward manners. They knew what was going on. Some of them deny that they knew certain things, but some of that gets a little bit sketchy. It's hard to deny that you knew what was going on when everybody else knew what was going on. So in understanding the way they speak about what was essentially unspeakable, killing on this mass scale. So I just want to make you aware of these issues up front. Definitely, there are people running around today trying to deny it, and they are, not just misinformed. They're, promoting an absolutely stupid but also dangerous idea that this somehow didn't take place. It most certainly did. How it took place and how it was undertaken is what we're going to get into, okay? So I want to make that clear from the beginning. That's what we're going to be going through. And again, as you go through these testimonies, that becomes abundantly clear. Now let me step back in here. Now, one of the other things, and this gets into the issue we're going to be getting into, with understanding history. Okay, let me go to the assignment sheet. Here it is over here. I'm going to come back to the grammar in a bit too. Here's the assignment sheet right here. Let me move myself down a little bit. What we're doing is writing a 6-paragraph essay, just like we did with Antigone, okay, that examines the testimonies in the film Shoah using either the Jewish, Polish, or German witnesses, okay. In history, these would be what are called primary sources, people who witnessed what is being examined. Now, an error not to make is to think that because somebody witnessed it, that they are somehow objective. That is most certainly not true, and I hope that becomes clear as we go through this unit. Primary sources are witnesses to what went on, but they are not objective. They will have certain ways of refracting what happened and what they saw, what they heard, what they felt, and the ways they remember it, and what they want you to know and what they want to remember, what they don't want to remember, and what they don't want you to know. All of them have that, okay? There is in history no such thing as an unbiased source. Nobody is unbiased. Everybody is. You can't help it because you're human. That does not mean you can't get to a basic common ground of reliability and understand what happened. It doesn't mean history is an anything goes undertaking. It's not. So these are primary, and we're going to look at the way they construe what they experienced and what they saw and what they heard and what went on around them. That's what we're going to be going through. And again, one thing with those folks today who are denying it, from these folks, these survivors, these villagers who lived in the towns where it was happening around Chelmno, and the guards and the people who are undertaking the killings itself, not a single one of them denies what went on. They might, lessen what they understood about it or try to undermine what they knew, but they won't deny what went on. So these denials that are going on today are flying in the face of these testimonies of the people who were actually there when it went on. So now what you're going to be doing is isolating specific points in the film that deal with events in Chelmno, Treblinka, or the Jewish uprising. As you go through these different accounts, I would like you to determine whether or not you want to write on Chelmno, whether or not you want to write on Treblinka, and that's one of the more efficient camps, or whether or not you want to write on the Jewish uprising that came towards the end. I took Auschwitz out of it just because so much is known about Auschwitz. I wanted everybody to experience this in a somewhat new way. So don't worry if you don't know much. In fact, if you do know more about it, you might have a bit tougher time understanding these testimonies because you might refract what you hear from them through what you already know. And I want you to experience these testimonies as firsthand as you can, and try to undertake understanding them on their own terms first and foremost. And then you're going to try to start analyzing it in much the way we did with Antigone. So that's what we're undertaking with this. You're writing what is essentially a history essay, and you're working with primary sources, people who were there. You are producing what would be known as a secondary source. In history, we have witnesses to events. That's what Shoah is entirely about, okay? This is entirely a collection of primary sources. The man who made the film, the man primarily behind it, Claude Lanzmann, he's the one who's going to walk around and interview folks, and he's going to have translators there. He speaks French. He also speaks German, too. He has translators when he goes and talks to the Polish and Ukrainian witnesses to it at various times, or sometimes Russians. He'll have translators with him. But he speaks French and German. And he lets them speak and say what they're going to say. He does challenge them at certain points, and it's very important that he does this, because he doesn't let them get away with anything they want, but he challenges them. And I want you to watch the way all of them respond, okay? Watch the way they respond, and it tells you a lot about what they went through. So this is a primary source. Secondary sources are written by scholars coming after the fact. Secondary sources work with primary sources and often work with other secondary sources to create a new secondary source, okay? So you weren't at the Holocaust. I'm assuming none of you survived it. I think that's a safe assumption. So you're not a primary source. When you're writing about the Holocaust, you're a secondary source, and that's what we're producing. You're going to analyze the words and phrases of the primary sources of the people who were there, okay? And you're going to be doing 1 point at a time from the testimonies of 1 or 2 of the witnesses. I want you to get a framework to work with early on. Chelmno or Treblinka or the Jewish uprising. Wait and see what you experience with watching this. Different students find different things fascinating. Watching the origins of the Holocaust as it gets rolling with Chelmno and what was going on. What was going on with the villagers? Why did they let this go on in their village? What was going on with Srebrenik, who was one of the survivors of it? He took a bullet in the head, but he still survived. You know, what was going on when they were undertaking this in the early stages? And then Treblinka, you're going to hear extensive testimony from Sukhomel, Franz Sukhomel, who was one of the guards, and who knew exactly what he was doing. He didn't know he was being recorded for this film, by the way. You're going to see that. He didn't know that. Okay, and so Landsman records him secretly and films him secretly as he was doing it. And Sukhomel didn't want his testimony getting out. Some people would argue that Landsman should not have done that. Sukhomel has a right to privacy. What Landsman argues, and I definitely side with Landsman on this, Sukhomel was part of a mass murder. You don't have a right to privacy when you're involved in a mass murder. Okay, so that's why he violates Sukhomel's right to privacy, is because this was a mass murder on a scale the world had never seen before. So you don't have a right to privacy anymore when you were part of this. So he actually hears from Sukhomel, and watch the way Sukhomel talks about it. Landsman challenges him, and watch the way you really get a sense of how the Holocaust took place from Sukhomel and another survivor, Bamba, and how he took part in it, what he did. And then finally we get the Jewish uprising in the later stages of this whole event, of this whole period in history, when the Jews realize that nobody's coming to help them, nobody's going to fight for them, that they've got to do something. When they start trying to get arms and try to get weapons, and what was going on in the Warsaw Ghetto, what the Warsaw Ghetto was about. And they, take on an uprising. And so you're getting very different perspectives on the Holocaust at the very beginning, in the middle as it gets going, and then the resistance towards the end. You pick whichever one you find most interesting based on the videos, okay? So how to undertake it. So let me get to that. So go to the discussions, and as we all know, I put the videos in there. And so you're going to see the course videos in there, and you're going to see the Shoah videos. Now, I've got the entire movie posted here. This is, how long is this? This is going to be a while. The first half is 4.5 hours. You do not need to watch all of that, okay? You don't need to do it. But you're going to see when this starts going that it's not, and I want to warn you about this, this is not an exciting documentary. This is not. They're not going to recreate things. They're not going to use ancient footage. They're not going to do any of that at all. They're not going to recreate anything, and they're not going to use any footage from the 1930s or 40s at all. They are instead going to use current testimonies. Current was when this was made, was late 70s, early 80s. That's when he did this. These people were getting old and were starting to die. You need to get the testimonies then, or they're too late. So he starts going through these and starts interviewing these folks. So he takes Srebrenik, who is one of the very few survivors, takes him back to Chelmno. Let me get rid of my ugly mug. This is Simon Srebrenik. Again, he took a bullet to the head, and the Germans who executed him thought he was dead, and so did the villagers, but they found him alive and dragged him out, and he did survive. He used to have to survive by singing on the river. So Landsman takes him back there and has him sing. And he used to sing as a child, as a young man, I think he was 13 or 14. He walks him through everything that went on before and takes him through it. And he takes him to what is now current day Chelmno, what was going on, where it is today. And he walks him through it. That's what all of this is. None of it is exciting or anything like that. It's very slow and methodical in how it goes through things, okay? That's what I want you to go through with this. Don't go through this idea that you're going to get a History Channel documentary. It's not. It's a very different kind of documentary in that it just records their testimonies, gets them to talk about what happened. This is the church that was in sight of Chelmno, of the site. And so he goes through that and makes you aware of how things were at these villages and at these sites. Here was a local villager who was by it, and he knew what was going on. And he describes what it was like being right next to it. So I want you to watch the first 26 minutes, and that's going to give you an idea of Chelmno. Okay? For Treblinka, it's watching the 43 minutes of the second part. Here's the second part of it. And again, you can click it, takes you to YouTube. I'm assuming you guys all know that. Now this is longer. This is going to go through, and what he does, this is Sukhumel being recorded, I think in the early 80s. He doesn't know it. And this is Bomba. They're going to then shift over to Bomba. They probably saw each other, but they probably wouldn't recognize each other. And Sukhumel's here explaining how Treblinka worked. And you know, and again, these are all the memorials that are currently there. Then he takes you to Bomba, who's currently in Israel as a barber. That's what Bomba did back during the Holocaust. He cut people's hair. So he can't get Bomba to go back to Treblinka, doesn't want to go, so he goes to Bomba's work and talks to him about it. That's what you're going to get. Again, nothing's exciting. I have not yet determined exactly which section I'm going to put up on the uprising. I'll get it, and it's going to be towards the end of part 2. But it will be another section about a half an hour to 40 minutes that you'll go through, and I'll post that pretty darn soon. That's what I want you to start getting through and watching this. You can, if you want, watch the whole darn thing. I encourage you to. You don't have to. I know it's a lot of time. I know it's quite long, and I know it's quite slow. Let me come back down in here. I know it's quite slow and everything else, but I want you to pay careful attention to the way they talk about what they're talking about. That's what I want you to pay attention to. And again, you're working with primary sources. That's what we're going to work through. Okay, so everybody go ahead and get started on that. Get watching Shoah. The first part's kind of quick. It's only 26 minutes, but you can get through it. Watch it carefully, though. It's very slow, and you can watch a little bit more. They're going to jump to different areas of the Holocaust and how it took part and all that. You do not need to go to outside sources. Just watch Shoah. The more you watch this, the better you'll get a grasp on it. It is difficult at times. I want you to know that everybody in here is biased in one way or another, is trying to cover things up for certain reasons, for very different reasons. The survivors aren't going to tell you everything, for very different reasons than the villagers aren't going to tell you everything, for very different reasons that the guards are not going to tell you everything. Nobody tells you everything. Everybody's going to give you a somewhat nuanced and changed perspective on it. And has covered things up for various reasons. They're trying to protect certain things, certain part of themselves. To know that beforehand, before you go in this, okay? Now, last little bit on the grammar quiz. I want everybody to know it's coming up. I'm going to have it posted on the morning of Thursday. It's grammar quiz number 1. Make sure you review chapter 1 and have that all ready to go. You're going to have the whole day to get through it. So go get that down and perfect it. Get it down, and if you bomb it, you can retake it later on, but get it down and get it out of the way and do a good job on it, okay? So that'll be up there on Thursday. I'll post it in the assignments. I'll post it in the assignments, and it will give you an immediate feedback on it, okay? All right, so that's where we are. That's what we're working on. You know, so just wait on those first grades. Those are coming out to you by the end of the week. And then the videos by the end of next week. Get going on Shoah. Just a little heads up, Shoah is a little bit difficult for folks at first, but go ahead and watch it. Watch as much of it you can of it, and summarize them the best you can by the end of the week, okay? All right, keep it up, guys. All right, take care.